Hey, how you doing? For those of you who've watched some of my videos before, you might know that I had a Pyzel Shadow XL, and I really loved that board. It was 6.2, it was 36.8 litres, and it just had a feel that I really enjoyed surfing. And what I discovered over the 5 or so years that I had that board is that it was really good in anything that was punchy 4 foot and above. But going below that, it didn't really perform so well. It was a high performance surfboard, you know, kind of a hybrid, I guess, in some respects, between a high performance and a daily driver. And that seems to be a bit of a thing with John Pyzel, unless he's obviously making boards for his team riders. But for his stock boards, that seems to be the case. So I love that board, but I felt like I needed a refresh. And I had to weigh out between getting another board exactly the same, another Shadow XL, the same dimensions, or looking at something different. And obviously during that time, the Red Tiger came along. Now the Shadow XL is a part of the Ghost family, but the Red Tiger is actually something completely different that John Florence and Pyzel developed. So I was interested to look at Red Tiger because I wanted something that was more of a daily driver kind of board, something that would work in 2 to 3 to 5 foot, not necessarily so punchy waves. And so I watched, as we all do, you know, the reviews. Noel Sellis, I had a look at his reviews on the board. I had a look at a number of other reviews, YouTube reviews, where I can see people surfing. I also looked at Woolly TV, and Woolly is kind of a little bit more, I guess, suited to me. The primary reason is, you know, Noel Sellis is fantastic. He's very technical, but he only really surfs in 2 places when he does his board reviews. One is at trestles or lower trestles, wherever that testing ground is for him, or he surfs in the wave pool. And where I surf most of the time, they're punchy, shifty beach breaks that certainly don't give you a lot of opportunities and long walls to work. You're lucky if you get 2 or 3 turns in before the wave runs out, or before you have to pull out as it closes out. So Woolly is a little bit more kind of good for me. He's not so technical, but you can see him surfing. He's a big guy, he's bigger than me. And the breaks that he rides 2 or 3 different breaks whenever he tests his boards. Obviously WA, which is where he lives, is different, but a little bit more like where I am, with a mixture of breaks that I do access from time to time. So I look at those 2 primarily, and I also look at the board shop and see what they have to say too. So I looked at the Red Tiger, and I actually ended up buying one. So it's quite a bit different to the Shadow XL. My Shadow XL was 6.2 and 36.8 litres. So I took the stock dimensions and just changed them slightly. This board is 6.1, it's 36.9 litres. It is 19 and 7/8 in width, and it is 2 and 7/8 in thickness, which gives me 36.9 litres, which, as you also know, is my sweet spot if you watch my videos. It's my sweet spot for volume. Now, I know volume is contentious and a lot of people disagree with my approach, but it works for me, and that's the important thing. So I went out and I got this board at 36.9 litres. So it's kind of like the Shadow in outline. It's got a bit of a hip in it. It's a squash tail. But the rocker is very different. It's very flat, John Pyzel says, right through the middle here. It's got a kick in the nose, which is what the Shadow has, but it's slightly wider in the nose than the Shadow. The reason I went for the Shadow is because I was surfing the Phantom, and I just found it was catching up here, and it didn't have enough rocker in the nose. So for me, the Phantom wasn't really the best board. The Shadow was. And while this is a touch wider, I think, than the Shadow in the nose, it's still got a kick in the rocker in the nose. It's fairly flat through here, and John Pyzel says and if you look at it, it is fairly flat through the tail as well. The bottom contour is the very significant thing that's different about this board. The Shadow had a single going into a double with a slight V out the back. This supposedly has a single in it, but the double concave starts pretty quickly up around here, and then it gets into quite a radical V through this section here, quite a strong V, keeping that double concave, which then sort of starts to mellow out, and it has a slight V through the tail. So it's quite a significantly different board. The Shadow, as you know, is part of the Ghost family. This is not. This is something entirely different. So I've had about 5 surfs on it now, and one of the things that took me a little bit of getting used to, and actually Wooly on Wooly TV made a point of this, is that this is a back foot surfer's board, in my view. I agree with him. The Shadow is not. It's got more of a wider sweet spot, and you can ride it a little bit up. What I've found with this board is that you really have to put your foot on the back to get it to really do what you want it to do. If you stand sort of up here, I feel constricted. And like I said, I've only had 5 surfs on it. It's still taking me time to get used to. But when I put my foot back there, I really notice the difference. The board starts flying around as you want it to do. It will go where you want it to do, where you want it to go, and it really responds well to, your demands on it. I mean, the other reason that I have bought Pyzel, and as you know, I've had quite a few Pyzel boards, and there's a few reasons for it. I'd have to say marketing is kind of one of them. And, John Florence is a fantastic surfer. I'm not really a big follower of the WSL, but of the surfers on the WSL right now, John Florence's surfing style for me is, the surfing style that I like, the surfing style that I would like to have, and also for me the most impressive. I mean, I love that powerful, driving, fast, radical, hard turns, and just the way that he surfs is just, something that I really enjoy. So there's a little bit of marketing associated with it. He's Pyzel's #1 rider. The other thing that does influence me a little is that the shop that I buy my boards from sells a hell of a lot of Pyzel surfboards, and so the guy who owns the shop talks Pyzel up a lot, and I had a few discussions with him about this board. But the other thing that kind of convinces me to stay with Pyzel boards, mostly, is listening to John Pyzel talk. I mean, he's very much a kind of a traditionalist kind of guy. He, is kind of a little bit old school. He tends to, which is what I like, he tends to think about, even though he's shaping for guys like John Florence and their boards, I have to believe are still quite a bit different to this, even though it's the same model. He does tend to think about your average surfer, and his boards generally have a reasonable amount of foam in them, particularly up front here, to make it easier for paddling. And I go for the XL boards because they tend to have more foam. They get more foam, and yet I can get the sort of dimensions that I want. Primarily, I want shorter boards. This is a 6'1", my Shadow's a 6'2", but I can get, with the XL, the volume that I'm after, which is in that sort of 36 to 37 range. 36.8 for the Shadow, 36.9 for this one. And so that's kind of key for me. And also, having tried a couple of epoxy boards, I'm still convinced that PU is best. It suits my surfing, it suits the waves that I ride, and consequently, I've gone for PU on this board. My Shadow XL was PU, my Ghost is PU. I have a Lost RNF 96, which is epoxy, but then I'm just after a grovelly summer wave board there, and that works fine. But for anything that's got a bit of juice in it, anything that's got some punch, I like PU. So I've had 5 surfs on this board. One of the first things I noticed, it was almost immediate actually on the first time I went out on this board. It was sort of 2 to 3 foot sets. It was clean and had a little bit of power in them. And even before I stood up, this board was taking off down the line. So it was planing really, really well as I was popping up. And it kind of caught me surprised the first time it happened. I've gotten used to it now, but you know, for me, that's a really good thing, that board is fast out of the gate. I really like that. It took me 2 or 3 waves to get used to putting my foot really right on the back, and then I had some good waves on it. I was really happy with it. I've since gone out in mostly 2, 3, 4 foot days, some of them not so clean, some of them closing out, and I have to admit I still haven't got my foot placement right, and I'm still not feeling really comfortable with the board. For me, it's not a board that you can just jump up on and just take off on day one and everything's, you know, fine and dandy and it's just perfect from day one. This board is not there for me yet. So today, it's a bit bigger today. It's maybe 4, 5, maybe 6 foot. So I'm going to go out and try it in those kind of conditions. But I'm not convinced yet that I'm going to keep this board. It'll be interesting to see what I do. In the meantime, I think I'm going to order another Shadow XL anyway, exactly the same dimensions as I had before, because I love that board and it doesn't make sense, even though it's 5 years old in terms of design now. I'm still really happy riding that board, and I am going to order another one, most likely. So those are the reasons I bought the Red Tiger. I'm still not convinced that it's a board for me, but I'm willing to give it more shots. I've been trying different fins. So I've been riding these neutral template fins as a thruster, and it seems like thrusters, certainly Pyzel recommends thrusters as the way to go. I've also tried, these are a neutral template, and these are the ones that John has been riding for quite a while. I've also bought a set of pivots because I wanted to try a set of pivots out on them. I don't think these are the right fins for this board, so I'm probably not going to use them on this board anymore. And Noel Salas, in his review of the Red Tiger, suggested using a twin plus trailer. So I've got a set of these Futures twin plus trailer. These are the FT1s. They're a honeycomb construction, and I really love using them on my RNF 96. And so I'm going to give them a shot on this board when it's smaller to see how they go. So I'm still experimenting with fins before I make a final decision, and I'm hoping that you know, this board actually does really well for me, and I'm going to give it a few more shots and try a couple of other fin options before I make a final decision. So if you're riding the Red Tiger, I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. Those are my thoughts on it, and I possibly will report back in time to see, and you can find out then whether I've still got the Red Tiger or not. So put your comments in the comment section below, and thanks for watching.